So we came across a Reddit post that talks about nonprofit leaders having to wear too many hats. Super interesting topic. Let's talk about it.
We are Ted and Lisa Snyder, and we are nonprofit consultants because we believe a better world needs healthier nonprofits. So as we were reading this Reddit post, it was super interesting because in our minds, we understood what was happening behind the scenes, but we also fully understood why this person was writing.
And a little frustrated.
And a little bit frustrated. And they said that from the beginning. They're like, I see frustrated posts here all the time about how someone is hired for one job and pretty soon they're doing 15 jobs. And it just gets to be a lot. And they end up doing something that doesn't seem like it lines up with their job. And as nonprofit leaders in the past, as consultants now, we've definitely seen this over time where it can seem like jobs are never stable. Maybe they're very fluid. Maybe you have one job title and 8 job descriptions. There can just be a lot going on. And so we wanted to walk through a few key parts of this frustrated rant and kind of talk about what's happening behind the scenes and honestly some of the ways in which this poster is incredibly right and very mistaken simply because they don't necessarily see what's happening behind the scenes in nonprofits. So let's jump into it. So first of all, they decide to randomly look for a nonprofit job post. Now to get started, I can't tell if this person is actually looking to work in nonprofit or if they just heard enough frustrations that they were like, I'm going to see what I can find out there. Because I've definitely done both. So,
Yeah.
you know. So what he found was a job for a translator and development intern. Any thoughts on
Translator
that?
and development intern. Well, that already sounds very broad.
Yes.
Especially the word development. Like what development? Like
Is
organization development?
Volunteer development, donor development.
Financial development, development of the cleanliness of our bathrooms, development of how much coffee comes in each day, intern. Which, I mean, that's probably part of it, just because you're an intern.
Curriculum development. Like, there's a lot here. Translator is interesting because that's not one that you see a lot. But development in the nonprofit world, what I think of with that is it's over a large area. There's probably an array of tasks. And honestly, they don't know what to call it. And the word development sounds good. Typically, it's kind of like when someone says I'm like, you know, different job titles in nonprofits don't mean anything. Like they just sound good. It's like I'm over I'm like the volunteer development and hospitality services person. And you're like, do you know what your job is? No.
When I see
I serve coffee.
When I see that job title, what I actually see is translator plus miscellaneous intern. That's what development means in the nonprofit world.
Oh, intern. I even see that. Intern. Yeah. So nonprofit pay is already low, but let's really lower your expectations.
Let's set the bar real low and make sure that they understand this is an intern.
Yeah,
you pay us. This is how this job posting works.
So the intern thing is a little bit different because at this point they're probably reporting to someone else helping out, which means they could literally be given any tasks any week. They're probably just that nonprofit's errand person.
Well, I mean, I've run an internship program in a nonprofit before, and the best thing about an intern is that they can function as an assistant to an already understaffed, under-resourced staff member.
Yeah, and depending on the organization, that intern could be the intern for an entire department. So you could have a couple different staff member basically just being like, go this way, do this way, not do
Devil
this
Wears
way.
Prada type situation.
Yeah. What do you accept nonprofit? Devil Wears Crocs?
Devil Wears Birkenstocks.
Win.
You should write that book. Somebody should write that book. Devil Wears Birkenstocks. It's the nonprofit version.
All right.
So then they started talking about the key responsibilities. So like in this job posting, the key responsibilities, and they were surprised to see this. Conduct donor search. Wait, why are we doing donor searches if we're a translator? Okay. Development of donor communications, data entry, support database, additional team responsibilities, which is like anything, and other development and translation responsibilities as required.
So in terms of key responsibilities for a role, This actually isn't as all over the place as someone might read from the outside. They're like donor research, because you're doing research, communications, and data entry, and then some database work. But the reality is, it sounds like this isn't just a development intern. It's definitely over like the donor development.
Yep.
And within the donor development umbrella, you have things like actually doing the research so that you can figure out what your communication needs to actually be. If you don't know who those donors are, how they communicate, what they enjoy, your communication is not going to work, and it's just not going to be effective. Mm-hmm. So those two things go together. Data entry and supporting the database makes 100% sense. A lot of times the people who are working with the donors have to make sure that the database is up to date so that mailings can go out properly, their information is being tracked, when they have giving campaigns, all of that is working correctly. There are multiple ways that databases within nonprofits are used, and you have to make sure that your slice of the pie of your database is being kept up to date, especially when it comes to donors. Otherwise, people will fall through the cracks, and you're going to lose out on a huge number of donations. Additional team responsibilities and other development translation here seems like it's probably bilingual. So that makes a lot of sense. But the additional team responsibilities, yeah, you're an intern.
No, you're in a nonprofit. I mean, there are going to be additional team responsibilities just because what donors expect from a nonprofit is that you're going to run your organization lean.
Yeah.
They are not expecting that you're going to have a ton of staff members doing a lot of very specialized tasks. Their assumption is that's for the for-profit space.
Yep.
In the nonprofit space, it's about like running as lean as possible.
Yep, which means that each staff member is typically going to have a wide array of responsibilities under them. But the expectation for volunteer-based nonprofits is that volunteers are going to be the ones that are handling a lot of it, and the staff member is just leading over different areas. So it might seem like a lot, like, all right, you're having to make sure the donor search is happening and the mailers are getting out, and there might be some marketing design going along with it. And if some of those overlap with volunteer positions, maybe you're trying to make sure certain teams are filled. But from a job description for that leader, it's all lead the team leads. Take care of the team leads. Make sure that the team leads are following what they're supposed to be doing and make sure the systems and structures are set up. That doesn't mean that you should be doing all of the tasks, but that you should be leading people to do them. So it's interesting because sometimes the umbrella is so large, and because you're the only staff member over that big umbrella, an outside person looks at it and says, this job description is crazy. But from a nonprofit side, you're looking at it going, this job description is all about leading volunteers. And so it's all the same work, it's just in different areas. So this made me really
So
funny.
the question that they're asking is, how can someone even think that all these functions can be mixed into a single position? We just kind of covered that a little bit. Like, if there's an expectation of working with volunteers, then those things aren't really that weird. And a lot of times, too, think about like just the size of nonprofits. They're usually like the size of a startup, right? So what this really is like, this is an office person, not like a go out and do work in the field person, right? So they're kind of basically saying like, you're going to be in the office. So there are going to be times when we have you help print things off or like make a sign out of something, or, you know, like it's going to be a little bit random just because of the proximity to the other people, the other staff members.
Right. Now, just because something is a nonprofit, I don't think gives them license to say we are going to like have these insane job descriptions that have 100 different things. As a leader of a nonprofit, you need to be able to boil down what the priorities are. Because even though there might be these random tasks that pop up that someone has to do, and a lot of times that someone is whoever happens to walk through the office at that moment to help, they need to know what the actual priorities for their job is. What is the most important thing? What's the second most? And what's the third most? So that at any moment, they know which ball is allowed to be dropped for a moment so that the nonprofit as a whole can progress and move forward. Mm-hmm. If everything is urgent, everything falls apart. And so nonprofit staff and volunteers need to know what the order of priorities are. As a leader, that means you need to be willing to boil down their job description,
right?
Let them know what those top things are, with the understanding that, yes, sometimes you have to pick up whatever's happening and go with it and help out, because that's how nonprofits work.
And the trick as a leader is to make those times when they're doing things outside of what their main job description is, make those times few and far between.
Yep.
You want them to be able to excel and succeed at the thing that they expected coming in for. Mm-hmm. And so make sure that as you're going through the hiring process, if you're putting out job postings, if you're going to be having somebody come in and your expectation is that not only are they going to do their main thing, but they're also going to be a team player, do not consistently over and over again make them do stuff that is outside of their purview, because they're going to get extremely frustrated because I was hired to do this. I'm good at this. I'm not good at, if you made this person who's supposed to be kind of like behind a desk and doing like a lot of database entry work, and you decide like, hey, today we're going to take the entire staff, including the office staff, and we're going to go knock on doors in the community and solicit donations.
Yeah.
That is a nightmare for this person. So you have to make sure that you're not asking them to do stuff that is so outside of their comfort zone that they're gone. Because just think about, as a leader, how expensive it is to get a new hire in, how long it takes, the resource and time it takes to train somebody in. In the for-profit sector, 6 to 9 months is usually how long it takes before you're actually able to see a return on investment of hiring a new hire.
Yep. And when you're a nonprofit, you still need to get to a spot where you can have that return. But if you are bringing in people and not allowing them to actually work in their roles and build up something that will function well long-term, you're essentially living in perpetual startup mode. And that is exhausting for people. You have to allow your nonprofit to mature, for positions within the organization to mature, so that systems can be built and actually have time to work and operate, and then start to bring actual results to fruition for your nonprofit. Mm-hmm. Now, in terms of job description, if I saw additional team responsibilities and other development responsibilities as required as an intern position, I'm like, makes sense. If it was any other position, I'd start to wonder how organized this nonprofit is, and what's possibly going on behind the scenes that's making it so that they can't guarantee that people are going to be able to focus on their work.
Yeah, and that would be something, if I was responding to the job posting, I would make sure to ask in the interview. Yeah. Like if I made it through the interview phase, saying like, hey, when you mean this, like how often is that going to happen? Because there can be a wide variety between different nonprofits and leadership styles of how often that's going to take place. They might just be saying like, oh, well, you're an intern. There might be like a day, 1 week where we need you to like run to the store and get some staples or something. And they're like, oh, okay, that's not so bad.
And so understanding how often it could happen and what the expectations are if it does happen. If there's a day where they're like, we're going to have 2 days where all the stuff is coming in, you need to understand if that leadership is going to say, and we're going to take that into account with your other responsibilities, and you better get everything else done because you're a salaried employee and I don't care how long you have to work. Two very different ends of the spectrum. Right. We've seen them both within the nonprofit sector.
We're going to have a week where it's all hands on deck, 12 hours a day, and we're going to completely interrupt your workflow to getting your normal stuff done. So you're also going to have to put in overtime the following week to catch back up. So, I mean, that's possible. Certain leadership styles do run things that way. So if you're the kind of person who's looking at these job postings, know that going into the interview process and try to get a read on how that nonprofit works. And then as a leader, again, be thinking through the fact that we live in a culture right now where the employees hire the employer now.
Yep.
We live in a culture where people can find information pretty easily. They can figure out how loyal a company is or an organization is without much work. They're hiring you as the employer. So you better have your stuff together, especially if you're going to put out job postings, because you're going to be scraping the bottom of the barrel if you do not have an actual good position that is well put together, well thought through, and has decent compensation. People don't expect to be paid a lot in the nonprofit sector, usually.
But the more chaotic an environment, the more that they're going to want to be paid. So
exactly.
If you are a nonprofit leader and you're in a position where you're trying to hire and things do feel chaotic, we do have a great video that can help. It's 3 strategies for a healthy team.
It's actually 6 strategies.
6 strategies.
3 bonus strategies.
It's 3 plus 3, which is 6 strategies for a healthy team. So that'll be popping up on the screen. We will see you in the next video.